I'm excited for this conversation because we're going to talk about culture and creativity, and we're here in Cannes, and so many of the conversations are around data and technology, but we can maybe blend the two in this. So let's get started, and I would love to have you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do, and answer this question. So in today's commerce landscape, we are seeing the lines blur between advertising, retail media, and commerce platforms. How do you each define creative commerce at your respective organization, and why is creative commerce so critical for our industry right now? And we will start on the end.
Sure. My name's Tyler Murray. I'm the Chief Enterprise Solutions Officer for VML. Basically means I look after all of our commerce, technology, and consulting for VML in North America. I think this is a really great time for creativity and commerce, and then those two things together is awesome. I mean, we define commerce mostly as, or creative commerce as, work that is driving conversion, but we hope it also is brand building at the same time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Smith, and I'm representing the Trade Desk today. I lead the retail business development team at the Trade Desk. So as I think about creative commerce, I think about how we go from transactional to transformational. And that is when you bring everyone together in a holistic way and you rally around what is the goal we want to accomplish. What is that singular goal? All divisions and all efforts can support, and that's where transformation can really be unlocked.
That's a tall order, though. I suspect that Larissa and Tyler might have some questions about how the entire organization gets aligned on the same thing.
No easy task.
Right? And Larissa?
Hi, I'm Aisha. Larissa and I are on the next panel. She's way smarter than me, so you'll find that out shortly.
It is Wednesday.
Girl, I'm with
not
you.
Thursday.
I'm with you. Diplo is still in my ear. I'm Aisha Khan. I'm the head of client engagement for global commerce at WPP Media. Great question to start off with. So how I would define it, it's funny, I recently wrote a thought paper on this and defined it as going from transactional to transformational. So
Meant to be.
I can't really beat that, but maybe I'll double click into that a little bit and define it as three things. I think it's about cultural insight, contextual creativity, and shoppable design. I think if you can nail those three things, you can start to connect culture with commerce and creativity.
Yeah, so I love that you brought in the cultural insight piece, because you can have amazing technology and you can have kind of the right targeting, but if your message does not land correctly, then it's all for naught and it's not going to convert.
Yeah, agree. It's insights.
Mark, last but not least.
Good morning. I'm Mark Grether. I run the advertising business at PayPal. You mentioned shoppable design, and I think that's a really good point, which I'm sure we will talk a little more about, which basically means how can you create creatives that actually become shoppable. So they're really bringing together, on the one hand, all the power of creating awareness, but then without any friction, lead the consumer to directly be able to actually transact in the creative, in the ad unit. I do think by doing that, that's a huge benefit for both the publishers and the merchants. It becomes much more efficient and effective in doing advertising. At the same time, it's much more convenient for the consumer if they don't need to go multiple hops to basically get aware of a product and then actually buy the product.
So I have another question, but since you brought up the friction piece, let's kind of dive into that. How does this reduced friction, let's say in an ad unit or in any type of experience, how does that unlock different areas of creativity? Obviously, it helps the consumer buy faster, but what does it do on the creative end?
I mean, maybe I start. So what we actually launched earlier this week is what we call the storefront ad. And so the idea basically is that merchants now can bring their storefront right into any ad unit, and hence they can basically bring shopping to the consumer. No matter where the consumer is on the open web, they can now, as a consumer, shop. And I think that's really, really important in the future, because if you think about AI and agentic AI, what happens is that more and more big platforms want to keep the consumers in their own walled gardens. And they want to basically make sure that they're not even leaving the walled gardens anymore, whether it's now Google, whether it's now ChatGPT, whether it's now Perplexity. And it means, how can I, as a merchant, actually reach a consumer in the future to then actually have transactions? And so hence we need to make sure that we are getting the shopping opportunity in front of the consumer wherever they are. And that's why I think it's important that the creatives become, true storefronts as opposed to just, plain kind of creatives.
How does that change things on the back end, though, if the entire store is in an ad? Or rather, I guess the question is, what things need to be set up on the back end for the store to be an ad and for that to be a frictionless experience for the consumer and then something that an advertiser can measure?
I'll jump in here because that's where a technology partner can come in and infuse UPCs and product data and to help make that as frictionless and fast as possible to be able to see that conversion data and see the full thing come through. And Mark, I was going to build on what you were saying as you're speaking about the open internet and the power of the open internet. And we see that 75% of a consumer's day is spent on the open internet. And as you all think about the time you spend on watching Netflix, watching Roku, watching Peacock, listening to Spotify, there's so much. How do we complement that experience instead of disrupt that experience? And Mark, I love where how do we just kind of help make that transaction easier and let them enjoy that content?
And maybe, Jill, it's a good opportunity to kind of create maybe a new term. You guys talk about the open web. Maybe the next thing is to talk about open commerce. As in, how can we actually provide commerce experiences on the open web? Yeah? And if you think about PayPal, we have the integrations that you just mentioned that are needed to do that with 30 million merchants globally. We have 400 million consumers on our platform. And hence, we do feel that we have the opportunity to provide these kind of open commerce experiences at scale to consumers and to merchants.
Open commerce versus closed commerce. So we're starting to throw shade on this panel already. Well, I mean, so for Aisha and Tyler, how does this idea of kind of open commerce change what you can do either creatively or kind of culturally to make things culturally relevant?
Yeah, I'll start. I love that. I mean, I think it's interesting when you look at shopping behavior. A lot of times when people go to a store or online or in-store, we often think they just have a monetary budget, but there's actually 3 budgets they have. They also have a time budget and a frustration budget. And if they go over on either of those others, they actually stop shopping. And so I think the more that we create a frictionless experience, the better things can be. Now, there's the cultural component too. How do we bring that in? I think that's a lot. What that means is more of like when I'm inspired by something culturally, can I buy quickly? Great experience for that. We just did this together with Mondelez on Oreo. Won a gold on Monday.
Congratulations!
It was super fun. Thank you. But it was a very fun cultural example where people were speaking in a language of Oreo, which is like they had a word for the O or for the chocolate part, and then they would say re for the cream part, and they would create crazy combinations and have these like ridiculous language around it. So anyway, we created a Duolingo app to teach people how to speak Oreo, but then connected it to purchase. So the better you could speak Oreo, it led to a better coupon, and you could go buy it right there. So very fun example of
So that's like
cultural
the
trend.
exact example of cultural commerce kind of in an empowered way. Aisha, how do you help, or do you help brands understand that the data that can be included in this process shouldn't just be used for targeting? It should also, it's kind of like this creative intelligence that can help drive these cultural shoppable moments?
Creative intelligence is an amazing phrase. I'm going to steal that. That's really great. And also, and frustration budget. I'm going to take that and teach my husband that. I think it goes back to insights, what we were talking about. I think there's so much around personalization as we think about these shoppable ad units. The key to driving conversion there, as well as brand awareness, is personalization. And so that's all based on data, DCO. So I think those purchase insights can even be led, like think about, right, if matcha is trending over coffee, that's a purchase insight, but that can also lead to your creative, making creative decisions about how you show up. So I think purchase insights will start to drive creative intelligence.
I would like for tea to actually trend more than coffee personally, because I feel like, I mean, as an anecdote, I feel like there's a ton of coffee-related content and creative, and I'm a tea connoisseur, and if someone were to figure that out and serve me ads that let me buy tea instantly, I would be very happy. And so it's really interesting that you're talking about using the insights about your customer to drive the creative and the ad units. But Mark, what were you going to say?
I want to just get one more level up here. If you think about insights, yes, of course, it's super, super important that we provide this kind of feedback loop, right, to advertisers, to merchants, which requires we need to be able to measure. And as commerce happens in the ad unit, that's much easier to do. But the bigger topic actually here is how do we ensure that advertisers and merchants continuously keep the relationship with the consumers, that they own it. Because if more and more commerce is happening in the walled gardens, or however we call them in the future, right, the closed commerce shops, AI-powered, all the merchants actually lose the relationship to the consumers, right? And so that's why, for me, it's so important that with things like storefront ads, we enable the merchants in the future at scale to continuously own the relationships to the consumers, which of course then means that, yes, they get the insights, they are able to create culture together because they continuously own that relationship, versus everyone is acting now behind an AI agent. And how do you then create culture? How do you then own the relationship and cultivate the relationship?
How do you even have how do you give them a connection to your brand still if the agent is buying on their behalf instead? Yeah. Mark, I do want to talk about the relationship piece because so PayPal has a trusted relationship with its customers, 25 plus years. How do you a big part of what you do, I'm sure, is that transactional data. Yeah. But how do you transform that transactional data into insights that the buyers can use without making your customers feel creepy? Like, how do you walk that line so that they can use the data and create these cultural moments, but not feel like PayPal was sketch for that?
I think that there are two elements. There is the kind of the consumer element to it, and you're spot on. PayPal basically was founded by providing this trust, right, to consumers so that they feel comfortable in shopping online. And now we basically do the same in an AI environment, right? We are now, for example, our integration with Perplexity means we are providing consumers the trust to shop in an AI environment. It's a new environment. You don't know as a consumer what do you do, what you don't do. And so trust is important, and that's what PayPal provides. That's one element, right? And then on the other hand, when it comes to partnership and insights, what's really interesting in our conversations that we have here in Cannes is that as we're sitting across so many merchants, we have basically this holistic view about purchasing behavior. Mm-hmm. And in many of our conversations, it's interesting not about ROAS, it's not about incrementality, it is actually about market share. Because who really makes a decision about marketing budgets, these people are unfortunately not in Cannes. Yeah. They are the CFOs. Yeah. The CFOs are the ones who actually decide how much money we are allowed to spend here. Mm-hmm. And then the CMO comes in and decides how to spend the money, where to allocate the money to which kind of publishers and media outlets. And the first question, the market share, is really about, okay, where are my consumers purchasing my product across all the merchants that I have relationships with? And that's where PayPal comes in and says, okay, as we have the relationships, as we have the insights, not just on one single merchant, but across all of them, we can provide that market share back to the CFO. We can help him to understand how much money does he need to invest to increase market share. And then the next step is to work with the CMO and the agency, how to best allocate the spend.
So now we're going to help the CFO and the CMO have a better relationship.
And we should bring them
amazing,
here,
right?
I'm sure if once they're here, they will give us more money next year.
Aisha, were you going to?
I was going to add to that. I think like the privacy topic is really prevalent. I think it's about giving consumers control, giving them transparency on how their data is being used. But I think the most important thing is thinking beyond ID. And at WPP Media, we're very excited about our open intelligence platform because what it does is, like partners like PayPal, for example, what we can do is, instead of actually looking at the ID level, transaction level, which is, to your point, can be seen as creepy, what we're doing is our federated learning, what open intelligence is it's able to learn the insights from this quickly, so understand patterns in the behavior of the data, and be able to pull the insights out, model off those insights, and activate audiences against that model instead of actually activating against the IDs. So that way consumers are knowing that they're informing a model, but they're not actually, like they're not giving up their data to be activated directly. And I think that one step removal makes a really big difference in the consumer's trust factor.
Kind of creating that model. I think the activation piece is also interesting here. Jill, TTD is an activation partner for so many companies in this space. How do you help them help their clients understand the ROI of some of these campaigns when, yes, there's sales, but as Mark said, there's market share, and then there's also this idea of, did it land culturally?
Right. I think there's so much to measure. It's new to brand buyers is something that is definitely coming up a lot. Of course, return on ad spend is becoming just now the expected metric, which last year it was like, we need more return on ad spend type of objectives. But really, it all goes back to what does the brand want to accomplish? What's the objective? If it's a brand awareness lift study, the Trade Desk is really agnostic to the measurement partners and really wants to just be able to provide all the options that the brands are looking for. But I was going to say, in terms of the creepiness and what you were saying, and like for me, as I think about AI, my hope is that AI starts to serve me ideas of what to buy before I even think about that. And it's important that the AI is being fueled by really good data in, good data out. So you're talking about the WPP offering, but it's just so incredibly important. And when I hear that you are served coffee ads, I'm like, we can be better than that. And what a wasted ad impression to serve you coffee ads. So I think about the power of retail data, the power of insights. We should know to suppress you as an audience. And if I find a tea brand out there today, I'm going to say, you need to reach Tamika because you are primed to be influenced by that advertiser.
Tyler, I think I'm going to lead with the last question for you. We talked about culture, we've talked about the insights, we've also talked about creativity. When a client comes to you and is very focused on conversion metrics, because those are important, is there a conversation where you kind of expand that view and say, look, we can do this really cool thing and it will be targeted and it will have insights, but here's it needs to matter more from like a cultural and creative perspective, or do you not have that conversation?
No, that's a great question. And we do get those conversations quite a bit. It's interesting when a lot of clients do their models for what drives incrementality or incremental sales in their ad spend. The media planning, the media targeting is a significant portion of it, but the number one component there usually is the creative itself. So usually it's up to 50% of what's driving the incrementality within the ad unit itself is the creative that's present. So, and often we forget about that part because the rest of it is so complex and there's so much change and so much newness there that we spend a lot of time there. I think both sides of that coin are important. And so if creative matters, really the way you get creative resonance is through culture and relevance that's there. So it's a big part of the conversation we're having even in the performance world.